All right, everyone, let's dive in to the world of Pfizer today.
Pfizer.
Yeah, that pharmaceutical giant we all know from the headlines, especially lately.
Yeah,
But you know what? There's so much more to Pfizer than just meets the eye, right?
absolutely.
It's like imagine you're prepping for a huge investor meeting
Yeah,
and you want to be the smartest person in the room,
the most informed.
the most informed. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we've got all these research reports. We've even got the transcript from their latest earnings call.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to try to extract the good stuff.
The golden nuggets.
The golden nuggets, exactly.
Yeah, what's really fascinating about Pfizer is that they're strategically positioned in pretty much every single corner of the pharmaceutical market.
It's true.
And it's not just about having, a blockbuster drug here or there.
Right.
It's about building a resilient business that can weather any storm.
So what does that actually look like? When you say empire, what are we talking about?
I like to think of it as a, pharmaceutical supermarket.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
with aisles dedicated to everything from cancer treatments to vaccines to heart medications, even rare diseases, you name it, they're probably in it.
So they've got a finger in every pie.
They really do, and they have 7 core businesses.
7.
7, yeah, each with its own unique set of products and challenges.
Okay, so where do we even begin with 7? That's a lot.
Let's start with their powerhouse, their oncology division, which features some really big names, like Ibrance for breast cancer,
Right.
Xtandi for prostate cancer, but they didn't just stop there, right? They've recently acquired Seagen,
Right.
which brings some really cutting-edge antibody drug conjugate therapies to the table.
I've heard of those, yeah.
Yeah, so we're talking about drugs like Padcev and Tukisa
Mm-hmm.
that are specifically designed to target and destroy cancer cells with incredible precision.
So they're not messing around in the oncology world.
No, they're not.
Okay, what else is on the shelves?
Well, next up is their vaccine division, which probably needs no introduction at this point.
Yeah, that's their claim to fame.
Right. You've got Prevnar, their pneumococcal vaccine, Abrysvo for RSV,
Mm-hmm.
which is already making a huge splash. And of course, there's Comirnaty, their COVID-19 vaccine.
Right, the one that kind of made them a household name, you could say.
Absolutely. And developed, of course, with BioNTech.
Of course.
But they're not a one-trick pony.
Clearly not.
No. Their internal medicine section is also packed with heavy hitters,
Oh, sure, yeah.
like Eliquis, their blood thinner, Nurtec for migraines, and let's not forget Paxlovid, their COVID-19 antiviral.
Okay, so they've got treatments in all the big areas.
And they've even got a whole aisle for inflammation and immunology,
Okay.
with Xeljanz for conditions like rheumatoid arthritis,
Mm-hmm.
and a pipeline of first-in-class tri-specific antibodies.
Okay, now you're just using big words.
Well, imagine an antibody that can latch onto 3 different targets at once.
Like a Swiss Army knife.
Exactly, like a microscopic Swiss Army knife designed to be incredibly potent and precise
Wow.
in tackling complex diseases.
All right, I get it. You win.
I win.
So we've got oncology, vaccines, internal medicine, inflammation, and immunology.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else in this pharmaceutical supermarket?
Well, they've also got sections for rare diseases,
Okay.
anti-infectives,
Wow.
and even what they call a legacy portfolio, which is essentially their collection of older off-patent drugs.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So basically, like you said, they've got a product for just about everything.
Just about everything, yeah.
But with a portfolio this big,
Mm-hmm.
they've got to have some massive competition.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Pfizer's playing in a league of giants.
Yeah.
We're talking about companies like Merck, Johnson & Johnson, Roche, AstraZeneca, Novartis, GlaxoSmithKline, the titans of the pharmaceutical industry.
Okay, so like a pharmaceutical Royal Rumble.
Exactly.
So how does Pfizer stack up against these guys? Who should we be watching out for?
Well, let's start with Merck. They're a force to be reckoned with in oncology, especially with their blockbuster immunotherapy drug Keytruda.
Yeah, Keytruda, big one.
But here's the catch. They're heavily reliant on Keytruda's success.
Oh,
So if a competitor emerges or new treatment paradigms shift,
Right.
they could be pretty vulnerable.
I see.
But Pfizer, on the other hand, benefits from its diversified portfolio,
Right.
which really spreads the risk.
So not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, let's look at Johnson & Johnson. They're the masters of diversification, right?
Yeah.
Their hands in pharmaceuticals, medical devices,
Correct, consumer health.
consumer health, everything. This gives them a safety net
Mm-hmm.
that Pfizer doesn't quite have, but it also means that they don't have the same focus
I see.
in those specific therapeutic therapeutic areas.
Yeah.
For example, while J&J has a strong presence in oncology and immunology, their vaccine operation doesn't have the same scale or market dominance as Pfizer.
So, diversification can be a blessing and a curse.
Absolutely. It's a double-edged sword.
Okay, interesting. What about some of the other companies?
So Roche has a significant advantage in oncology and diagnostics.
Yeah.
They've built this really powerful ecosystem around these areas,
Mm-hmm.
but biosimilar competition is starting to eat away at their market share.
Oh, interesting.
Especially for some of their their key products.
Biosimilars, that's the generic version
Exactly.
of these biologics, right?
It's really shaking things up.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
What about AstraZeneca? How are they doing?
AstraZeneca is all about specialization.
Okay.
They've doubled down on oncology and rare diseases,
Interesting.
pouring resources into developing innovative biologics.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a high-risk, high-reward kind of strategy.
Okay.
And they lack the same level of diversification as Pfizer, which could be a disadvantage in a volatile market.
So it's interesting, right? You can either go all in or spread the risk.
Right.
All right, so we get two more, Novartis and GlaxoSmithKline.
Yeah. Two more titans.
What are their, pluses and minuses?
So Novartis is another heavyweight champ,
Yeah.
especially in oncology, and they're making big bets on gene therapies.
Gene therapy, okay.
Which could be game-changing if they pay off.
Right, that's the thing.
It's a big if.
It is a big if, right? And their reliance on pipeline success for future growth and their comparatively, thinner margins makes them a bit more vulnerable.
All right, and last but not least, GlaxoSmithKline.
Yeah. GSK, another powerhouse in vaccines, especially with Shingrix, their shingles vaccine.
Right.
But they're playing catch-up in areas like oncology and cardiovascular disease. Okay. Where Pfizer just has a clear advantage.
Interesting.
In terms of portfolio breadth and the depth of their research.
So, I mean, it's a crowded field.
Very crowded, right. You've got Merck with all their star power in Keytruda, Johnson & Johnson playing the diversification game, Roche facing those biosimilar headwinds, AstraZeneca specializing, Novartis betting on the future with gene therapy, and GlaxoSmithKline trying to catch up in some areas.
Yeah, it's a real battle royale.
Yeah. So how is Pfizer going to win? What's their game plan with all these other companies fighting for market share?
It's a good question, and we'll get into that. It's not about brute force. It's about strategy.
Okay, so what is their strategy? Can you break it down a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, they've got this multi-pronged growth strategy that really focuses on, a few key things. Innovation, strategic acquisitions, operational efficiency, and really solidifying their leadership position.
Those all sound great in theory, but what does that actually look like?
Right. So first of all, they're really doubling down on their core therapeutic areas.
Okay.
So they've streamlined their R&D into 4 main units. You've got oncology, vaccines, internal medicine, and then inflammation and immunology.
Makes sense.
This allows them to, accelerate the development and launch of new therapies.
So speed and agility, basically.
Exactly.
Okay, so they're focused.
And then their pipeline is overflowing with potential. We're talking about 13 potential pivotal program starts. Just in 2025 alone.
That's a lot.
Huge. Yeah. They're really excited about oncology assets, next-gen vaccines, and those first-in-class tri-specific antibodies we talked about earlier.
Yeah, the Swiss Army knife of medicine.
Exactly.
So what are some of the areas they're specifically targeting?
Well, remember that Seagen acquisition we talked about?
Yeah.
That was a strategic masterstroke, in my opinion, at least.
Okay.
They're using that to become a major player in ADCs, or antibody drug conjugates. Right? These are the therapies that act like guided missiles, delivering drugs directly to cancer cells, minimizing damage to healthy tissue. They've got some potential blockbusters in development: ELXVO for multiple myeloma, PADI-CEV for bladder cancer.
So oncology is a big one for them.
Yeah, but they're not forgetting about vaccines either, right?
Right. They're not resting on their laurels.
No. They're actively working to maintain their leadership position.
Okay.
In the pneumococcal, RSV, and maternal immunization markets.
Makes sense.
They've got new and improved versions of Prevnar in the pipeline.
Okay.
PCV25 and PCV30+, which could really cement their dominance.
So they're going on the offensive.
Yeah, exactly. But, drug development is expensive.
Yeah, it's a long and expensive process.
How are they managing the financial side of this ambitious strategy?
Right. Where's the money coming from?
Well, they're really focused on efficiency, becoming leaner.
Okay.
They've set a pretty ambitious target, $4.5 billion in cost reductions.
Wow, that's a lot.
Huge. By 2025, this is going to free up resources, boost their profitability, allow them to reinvest in innovation.
So it's, cutting the fat so they can grow the muscle.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
But cost cutting, that always has some risks associated with it, right?
Absolutely, there are always risks.
So what are some of the possible downsides?
These reductions are necessary for long-term sustainability,
Right.
but they need to be implemented very carefully to avoid disrupting operations or compromising quality.
I see.
It's a balancing act.
For sure. Okay, so we've got innovation, we've got strategic acquisitions, we've got operational efficiency. What else is in their playbook?
Well, they're not afraid to make bold moves. They're still actively pursuing acquisitions and partnerships, especially in oncology. They're also looking into potentially expanding into other areas.
Oh, like what?
Like obesity and cardiovascular drugs.
Interesting.
These are really lucrative markets.
So, they're kind of building a pharmaceutical empire here.
That's a good way to put it.
But even empires can crumble, right?
Yeah. Of course, every strategy has its risks.
What are some of the things that investors should be watching out for?
Well, for starters, they are reliant on their pipeline delivering, right? If clinical trials fail or regulatory approvals hit a snag, their growth projections could take a hit.
Yeah, for sure.
And this is especially important because some key patents, like those for Eliquis and Ibrance, are set to expire in 2028.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they really need to have some replacement revenue lined up.
I see. So it's a race against time.
Kind of, yeah.
What else?
They're also facing the, inevitable decline in COVID-related revenue.
Yeah, for sure.
Comirnaty, Paxlovid sales are going to shrink as the pandemic fades.
Right. That's the case for a lot of companies.
Exactly. And managing this transition smoothly is going to be critical.
Okay, so they've got some challenges ahead of them.
Yeah.
What else? What else is there?
Well, remember Seagen?
Yeah, the acquisition.
Integrating a company that size is no easy feat.
I bet.
They need to ensure a smooth transition, realize those synergies, avoid culture clashes.
Culture clashes are a big one.
Yeah, huge. It can really derail things.
So they got to be careful with that.
And then those cost-cutting measures.
Yeah.
We have to remember they could backfire.
Yeah, how so?
You've got to reduce costs without compromising quality or morale.
That's a fine line.
Exactly.
Okay, get it.
And then, of course, there's the regulatory landscape.
Right. Always changing.
Always changing. Drug pricing negotiations, potential policy shifts, especially with the new leadership at HHS.
Yeah, that's definitely a big one.
Huge. Yeah, it could impact profitability.
Politics and pharmaceuticals, it's an interesting combination.
To say the least.
All right, so we've talked about a lot of challenges. What's the latest from the front lines? Like what did their earnings call say?
Yeah, let's take a peek behind the curtain.
Give us the inside scoop.
See what the CEO and CFO are saying. Overall, I think there's a sense of, cautious optimism.
Okay.
They reported strong performance for 2024.
Okay, that's good.
12% operational revenue growth, excluding the COVID products.
So the core business is doing well.
Yeah, driven by Mindoquel, Padifay, Eliquis, and Nurtec.
Okay, those are some big names.
Yeah, big players.
All right, so that's encouraging.
They're also making progress on the cost reduction goals.
Okay, good.
They've hit their $4 billion target.
Wow, already.
Yeah, on track for even more savings, which should boost those profit margins.
Yeah, that's what they want to see.
And give them more flexibility.
Okay, what else?
They're also focused on deleveraging the balance sheet.
Which means?
Reducing debt.
Okay.
Right. This puts them in a stronger position for future investments, share buybacks, potentially even more acquisitions.
So they're playing the long game.
Exactly.
What about R&D?
R&D, yeah, they've brought in new leadership.
Okay.
Focused on, developing new medicines, strengthening the pipeline.
So they're not slowing down on that front?
No, not at all. This is crucial.
Oh, of course. Any pharmaceutical company needs new products.
Absolutely.
But are they facing any, challenges in that area?
They're facing the same headwinds as many others.
Okay.
Drug development is just getting more and more complex.
Right. Yeah, and more expensive?
More expensive. The regulatory hurdles are higher. The competition is tougher.
So it's not an easy path?
No, definitely not.
Okay. Are there any other concerns?
Well, they did acknowledge the potential impact of the IRA.
The Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah.
They're estimating a $1 billion revenue hit.
Wow, that's a big number.
Yeah, due to Medicare pricing negotiations.
Okay, so that's a big unknown for them.
It's a big unknown for the whole industry, really.
How are they planning on dealing with that?
Well, they're saying they're really focused on developing and launching therapies that provide, significant clinical benefits.
Okay.
They believe that if they can demonstrate the value, they'll be able to justify the price.
Okay, so prove their worth.
Exactly. And despite all this,
Yeah.
they're still projecting pretty solid revenue for 2025.
Okay, what are we talking?
Somewhere between 61 and 64 billion.
Okay.
Their adjusted earnings per share between 2.80 and 3.00.
So, I mean, they're still optimistic, I guess you could say.
Yeah, cautiously optimistic.
Okay, all right, well, that's a lot of information.
Yeah, we've covered a lot.
So for our listeners, let's give them a cheat sheet here.
Yeah.
What should investors really be paying attention to as this whole story unfolds?
Okay, so key takeaways. If you're thinking about investing in Pfizer,
Yeah, give me the top 3 things.
like number 1, pipeline execution.
Okay.
Can they actually deliver on those clinical trials, get those therapies to market?
Right, yeah, the rubber meets the road, basically.
Exactly. Specifically, watch ALRX-EO for multiple myeloma, atirmociclib for breast cancer, those new pneumococcal vaccines, and danuglipron for obesity.
Okay, big ones.
Yeah, those are the potential blockbusters.
Okay, number 2. They also need to navigate those patent expirations.
Right, 2028 coming up.
Yeah.
Big year for them.
They're going to lose exclusivity on some key drugs, so they need those replacements.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And then number 3, the political landscape.
Right, always a wild card.
Always a wild card. Drug pricing reforms, potential policy shifts from HHS.
Yeah, who knows what could happen?
It's a major unknown.
Okay, so pipeline execution, patent cliffs, and political storm clouds.
Yeah, those are the big ones.
Definitely some serious challenges, but also, I mean, a lot of opportunities.
Huge opportunities, yeah.
So they're not out of the game by any means.
No, not at all.
Okay. Anything else that, that people should be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, we can't forget about the competitive pressures.
Right, those other companies.
Yeah, can they stay ahead of the curve in oncology and vaccines?
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's always the, macroeconomic.
Right, the global stuff.
Geopolitical risks.
Yeah, all that. So what's your, overall assessment? Is Pfizer a good bet?
Well, I think based on their recent performance, their strategic moves, their commitment to innovation, I'd say they're well positioned for growth.
Okay.
They've got a diverse portfolio, strong pipeline, strong financials. They're also taking steps to become more efficient, adapt to the regulations.
Okay, so they're doing the right things.
It seems like it, yeah.
But are there any red flags that investors should be, wary of?
Well, no investment is without risk.
Of course, yeah.
Pharma is a volatile industry.
Right.
There's always unforeseen challenges, but based on their trajectory, I think they've got what it takes.
Okay, so cautious thumbs up.
I'd say so, but remember, investing is a marathon, not a sprint.
Right. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme.
Exactly. Do your research, stay informed, make decisions that align with your goals.
Okay, well said.
Thank you.
So as we wrap up part 2 of our deep dive into Pfizer, we want you to think about this. Do you think their recent moves, their focus on oncology, the cost cutting, will it pay off in the long run?
It's a question worth considering, and as we move into the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore these questions in more depth.
Okay, sounds good.
Give you even more insights to help you make those informed decisions.
It's really impressive how Pfizer's not just reacting to the healthcare landscape. They're actually trying to shape the future of medicine.
Yeah, it's like they're looking ahead, anticipating the trends and getting ready to lead the way.
And one thing that really stuck out to me is their focus on innovation.
Yeah.
Like they're not just, making small changes. They're going for these huge breakthroughs.
Right. They want to revolutionize how we treat some of these, really serious diseases.
Exactly. And they're not afraid to dive into these, cutting edge areas.
Gene therapy.
Yeah.
Those antibody drug conjugates we talked about.
And they're backing it up with, serious cash. Like that Seagen deal.
Yeah, huge.
That was a big statement.
It really was. It showed they're serious about oncology.
Yeah, but it's not just about spending money.
Right. It's got to be smart.
Yeah.
strategic investments,
Yeah.
and then having the know-how to make it work,
To execute.
to make those investments pay off.
Exactly. Which brings us back to the cost cutting.
Right.
They're streamlining things, getting more efficient.
Freeing up those resources for growth.
Exactly.
Oh, that's smart.
But we can't forget about the new leadership at HHS.
Yeah, that's a big wild card.
That could really change things, especially for their vaccine business.
Absolutely. We'll have to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess the big question is Pfizer a company you would bet on?
Well, I've seen a lot of companies.
Yeah.
And Pfizer's really in a league of its own. I mean, they've got the size, the resources, the track record. I think they're going to be a major player for a long time.
But like we said, there's those patent cliffs coming
Yeah.
up. The political uncertainty.
The competition.
It's not going to be easy.
It never is.
Right. But they're making the right moves.
Yeah, I think so. Investing in innovation, strengthening their core businesses, adapting to the market.
If they can keep it up, I think they've got a real shot.
I think so, too.
Well, that's it for our deep dive into Pfizer.
Yeah, we covered a lot.
We talked about their business, their strategy, their challenges, and their opportunities.
Hopefully it helps.
Yeah, hopefully it gives you some food for thought.
Some insights.
Yeah, whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting out.
Investing is a journey.
It is.
Just got to keep learning, keep exploring.
And keep thinking critically.
Absolutely.
That's the most important part.
Yeah.
All right, until next time.
Happy investing, everyone.
Happy investing.
This content is produced by Compasscope.com. For more than 1,100 public listed companies, find detailed research reports, visual mind maps, earnings call analysis, and audio discussions on Compasscope.com.